A couple of weeks ago, I gave a homily at Daily Mass on the Gospel reading from Luke, where Jesus comes to the home of Martha and Mary. And of course, I think we all know kind of the story. Jesus comes in, Martha is preparing everything for the dinner and trying to give hospitality to Jesus, while Mary sits at Jesus' feet. And of course, Martha gets all upset and goes to Jesus to complain about the fact that Mary's left her basically to do all the work, and asks, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do by myself all of the serving?" Because Martha feels burdened by what she is doing. That's what Luke says. Martha, burdened with much caring, came to him. And after voicing her complaints, Jesus' response, I think, probably was a little unsettling at first for poor Martha. "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and worried about many things. There's only one thing, and Mary has chosen the better part, and it will not be taken from her." I have a feeling that initial response probably did not go over very well with Martha. But there's a deep truth in what Jesus is saying, obviously, that can easily be lost, I think. And the truth and the reality of the situation is, why does Martha feel burdened, anxious, and worried? It's really simple. Because she took her focus off of Jesus. Her focus became about what she felt needed to be done. She had to be in charge. She had to be in control of what was happening. And the more that she took control, the more that she made sure things happened the way she needed them to, the way she felt they needed to be, the greater burden she felt, the more worried she became, the more her anxiety deepened. While Mary, on the other hand, focused on Jesus, and for her, everything was okay. And I think there's a real lesson that we have to take from that. A real lesson we have to understand in what is happening in this story. Because what happens to Martha is really what happens to us in so many ways. We lose sight of what actually matters because we lose our focus on Jesus. And what we really discover in this story is that deep and abiding truth, that the more control we take over our lives, the more we determine what needs to happen, the more we set the expectations for ourselves and for others, the greater the burden life becomes. Taking control does not give us less burden. It gives us more. And the more we feel that sense of burden, the more our anxieties will deepen. The more we feel that sense of burden, the more anxious we become, the more worried we become. And there's only one way to really overcome this, and that's to learn the lesson of Mary. It's to sit at the feet of Jesus first. It's not that Mary wasn't supposed to do work. I have no doubt that most likely afterwards she got up and started doing what she needed to do. But at that point, she knew what Jesus' expectations were. She knew what Jesus needed her to do. And she allowed Jesus to be in control. And so she wasn't burdened. She wasn't anxious. She wasn't worried. Because she wasn't in charge. Jesus was. And that's where we need to get in our lives. And it's a really simple formula then to determine when our lives are actually out of control. And our lives are actually out of control the more we try to control them. Our lives are out of whack the more we try to determine what needs to happen. And the simple formula then is to see that we've lost our focus on Jesus is, do you feel burdened? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel worried? You already know what the answer is then. If you say yes to any of those questions, you've lost your focus. You've taken control of your life. And you need to give it up. Let us learn from Martha what it is we're called to truly seek. Not that we're not called to do work. We are. But we're not supposed to determine on our own what that work is. It's not that we're not called to action, because we are. But again, we're not called to determine what that action is. The more we choose to do that, the greater the burden of our lives will be. Again, it's a simple formula. Seek to give control of your life back to Christ. Come to focus on Him. And then He will take up the burden of our lives. He will walk the walk with you. And once you know Jesus is walking with you, what is there to be worried or anxious about? Because ultimately, He's the one in charge. Again, look to the formula. If you're burdened, worried, or anxious, simply learn from Mary and turn to look to Christ.